Hello and welcome to Chat with Dr. Kat. I'm Dr. Kat. Today we are going to be talking about AI and how it's affecting our lives, how it's affecting us in the therapeutic world. If you're going to therapy, if you're checking in to see what your therapist is saying, maybe you're not going to therapy and just using AI. So we're going to be looking at all the different effects of AI, and we have a wonderful expert today in this area who has done fabulous research within the therapeutic community and how he can bring it to our world, because AI is taking us by storm, and we want to look at those things, and especially want to look at how it's affecting our families, ourselves, and our community. So again, remember, no fluff, no judgment, just real talk that leads to real change. So today we have Robert Scholz, and he's going to be talking to us about AI. So welcome, Robert. I'm so happy to have you on today.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. And such a topic that is on the minds of so many people. So
It
I'm happy
is.
to add to the conversation.
So let me ask you, what first led you to AI and even wanting to research it and its impact?
Well, I think it's like a lot of things in my career. I think it found me rather than
Right.
me going after it on my own. I think if you're a clinician, I think we've all over the past couple of years just heard our clients coming into the room really talking about the effects of AI on their life and how they're using it in their life.
Right.
And so I think that was one of the places. But through some of my other work, and a lot of the work I do is in, really helping clinicians to assess for things like suicidality or homicidality. There's a lot of work in that field that has been actually using AI. And also, in the process of doing a book on assessing suicide assessment, some of the other collaborators on that project and we started kind of having some concerns about some of our clients going to AI when they were having some of those more concerning thoughts and trying to get feedback or help.
Right.
So one of the ideas we came up with was, let's get a sense of how well these different AI tools are at responding to some of the more concerning things. And that really led into the study. Probably the
I'm sorry,
first study,
Robert,
which
one second. So what you're saying is, just really quick, is that not all AI is created equal. That's what you're saying.
correct. Well,
Okay.
and that was really our going into the study was we weren't really sure. And that was really the hypothesis was we wanted to look at some of the different major AI tools that were out there and kind of see how well they would respond to concerns that clients might pose to them.
Hmm.
And no, there hadn't been any research done on that before. So it was, kind of a novel study, at a time when, we know users, our clients, and people in general were using AI for mental health concerns. In fact, when some of the early study from some of my co-contributors is that AI might be the biggest mental health provider in the world.
Right.
When we think about the number of people that are going to AI on a fairly consistent basis to talk about personal concerns.
Yeah, I do. I see it in my practice. It tends to be a little bit more concerning for me sometimes when I see the adolescents and how they're using it. And it's always interesting to me because someone will come back to me inevitably and say, "Oh, in between our sessions, I went ahead and, asked ChatGPT if, the advice you gave me was the best advice." And then I have to come back and say, "Well, I gave you options and choices. So what was about what happened with those options and choices that you didn't like, that you felt you needed to follow through on, and what advice did you hear?" Because a lot of times I find that they're looking at trying to find answers because you know, when you're in the therapeutic experience, your therapist wants you to move forward. The whole part of it is to move forward, to heal, to be challenged in your thought process that may be keeping you in this place, right? And AI tends to be on the softer side, and your therapist is going to be a little bit more of trying to help hold you accountable. So it's a way, I'm seeing that they're using it as a way to even get out of some of the things, because ChatGPT said, or another thing I hear is, actually, what you said was great. ChatGPT agrees with you. And I'm like, wow, great. So let me ask you, what are you seeing as far as the benefits in the therapeutic experience? What are you seeing?
Yeah. Can I respond real quickly
Yes.
to that part first?
Yes.
I always talk about that, AIs they're incredible sycophants. They will tell you what you want to hear.
Exactly.
They will validate, and that feels good. Especially
It
like
does.
and I think to your point, like in a therapeutic relationship, that's not a healthy therapeutic relationship. I mean,
No.
we want to be empathic, but there's times where appropriately challenging or really making people think about the different options or proposed solutions, helping them kind of come to some conclusions, not just telling them what they want to hear. So anyway, I thought that was absolutely. I see that quite often, and I've experienced that when I've used AI, and it's made me have to question myself a little bit. But benefit-wise, I mean, I think, and I think some of what I'm reading about AI, and I think it sometimes scares some therapists that is it going to replace us? And I don't think it's going to replace us. But at times it can provide, some psychoeducation for people. Like when, between sessions, if they're wanting some information about a certain type of therapy, or let's say they're having some sort of symptom. I think for some, similar to just using the internet for searching for some information, it can be helpful. But with the balance and understanding that they need to make sure that the sources that the AI is gathering the information from is valid. So
Right.
so it's the balance. Like on one hand, people have greater access to information than they ever have before, and AI can provide some of that information that can be useful in the moment. I do think it, in a weird way, has help people talk about and try to get some feedback about what they're experiencing, maybe where they wouldn't have done that before. So by interacting with the AI, it's having them talk about something that they're struggling with. It's kind of like their first contact and reaching out for help. And so, in that sense, it's better than them not talking about it. It's better than them not looking at it or evaluating it. It's just understanding it has limitations to it.
Right.
I sometimes talk about, AI is really can sound it really empathic, but it's not empathic. It actually has no real empathy. There's no
Exactly.
real relational part to it. But I think, so that's the draw for I think everyone that uses it is like they think they're interacting with, it feels real, even though it's really not real. It's not a real relationship that they're in. Yeah, so I think for some of my clients, I think I do see that it helps propel them even through like between sessions to continue thinking about things. The drawback is sometimes it actually stunts some of their thinking,
Yes.
and the AI is doing all the thinking for them. So it's
Right.
the pros and cons of some of the benefits are also some of the drawbacks when
You're
used
right.
too much. Yeah.
I always think about, when we look at research, and I think back to, and I had a computer when I was in college, but I still had to do the research. I still had to go to the library. Remember, you look up the little, where is the book in this massive library with the tiny little pencils and the piece of paper. I always tell my kids this, you know, and why maybe on my research paper it was only choose 3 to 5 references is because it could take you an entire day to find the reference, to locate the book, to physically come back, read through the book. So there was a lot more work into it. And now people can literally grab their phone and say, hey, can you give me 15 references? What page would I find this on? Or give me the exact quote. So there's no longer the hard work that goes into the research. It's easier. On the flip side, it allows you to really do more in the actual doing phase rather than the research phase. So, sometimes I've recommended some patients to and clients to, ask what questions, what are some better questions that you can ask your partner in order to get them to respond to, XYZ, or to figure out what's going on in the relationship. And sometimes that additional work now lends itself to more dedication to their therapeutic process. But on the other side, what we were talking about, AI and, ChatGPT really telling you what you want to hear. I always think about it, it's almost like the mirror on the wall type of, experience. Who's the fairest of them all? Yes. Why, it's you, it is you. And it isn't until you've been kind of isolated from other people because you're only focusing on ChatGPT's response. That's my concern with adolescents, is that they go to that mirror and they're not talking to the parents. Maybe they stop talking to friends because AI is giving them what they want to hear. But you're right, there is no real empathy there. There is nothing. And then eventually, once they've been isolated, now they say, oh, wait, there's someone fairer than you. And then they're hit with that, don't know what to do. So what are some other drawbacks that you're seeing even more with AI?
Well, I think what you're hitting on, one of the ones that I see is really this sort of social dependency, that it is their social outlet. Right. Or not even dependency, it's almost become a replacement. And so I see clients who are using it to really replace real connection.
Yeah.
I think the other part that alluded to and talked directly about is that I think it has stunted critical thinking.
Yes.
And about issues. I think it doesn't always take into consideration when people are dealing with relationship challenges, like there's another person in that issue. And, trying to help the person try to wonder like their perspective or how they're being seen or viewed in the relationship, or their opinion on what's happening. Because generally speaking, you plug the issue into AI, it will tend to lean more towards agreeing with you and helping to validate your perspective, but not always asking you, well, what do you think this other person thinks?
Right.
And unless you ask it directly, if you do go in and ask it directly, like, what am I missing? What might be going on for the other person in this? Then you may get more accurate feedback. But a lot of times people stop with the first line of interaction with the AI and don't go to that next level. So I think it has those limits. I think the other drawbacks I worry about is that, it's not a clinician. And when people are bringing more serious issues, it doesn't have like clinical judgment in the equation.
Right.
It doesn't have, nor does it have the responsibility to act if it's hearing something that is crucial or significant, like suicidal ideation or child abuse or And that's one of the things that came out in the one study that we did was so many times were concerning comments or like clinical statements where we were testing to see how it would respond. There was no like in the majority of cases there was not a sort of a call to action and the AI has no responsibility in doing anything. So if you're putting something serious in, hoping to get like the support you need, you may not get the level of support you need from it, particularly I think in more challenging clinical situations. And then I worry just frankly about privacy issues. I mean, AIs are not HIPAA compliant. They're not
They're
protecting
not.
your information. And, I know just myself just being, maybe when I first started using AI, I wasn't as conscious about that. And, not putting like client information in, but just even my own information in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where is this data getting stored or how much detail, to put in there? Or, obviously I created a username when I set up that account.
Right.
So that information I'm putting in there, like, how protected is that? And I think the answer is we don't know. And so I think we need to be careful and, in this early stages of AI and data storage of AI information, we need to be pretty thoughtful about, what we're disclosing.
I agree with you. So many points that you just brought up. One of the biggest ones that just, again, I think needs repeating is that it is not a clinician and don't have that safety in place. So, when you come to therapy, we always say there's limits to confidentiality except for danger to self, danger to others, child abuse, elderly abuse, things like that. And it's true when somebody is speaking about that, instantly the clinician knows, okay, you're hearing something about child abuse. So we probe further. Are there other children present? You may be speaking about something maybe 15 years ago, but is this person still around children today? We ask these further probing questions. And then from there, then we've got to reach out and help that child. Or if someone is feeling suicidal or showing signs, absolutely asking for the next step. Domestic violence, though, to me, is another huge one because, they're so fearful to reach out, oftentimes have a therapist because the violator is going to find out. So they're going to AI to ask questions. But again, are they really creating a safety plan? Because maybe the person isn't asking for a safety plan. Maybe they don't know. And then from there, where is that information? Do they know how to then hide the information from, right? Because can you imagine the violator comes in and sits down at that same computer and sees absolutely everything. Yeah. This could be literally life-threatening. So these are huge questions that people aren't naturally thinking because they don't have the therapeutic mind or the skill of the clinician to even think about those things.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, there's a lot of questions here, and it's interesting. I was speaking to another person who's going to be guesting on the show, and she uses a lot of AI, and she's actually she works with chemical dependency, and she was able to create her own like an avatar for herself to be able to speak to people. And I know this is like a big thing, and and she's spent a lot of time for it to get to know her and what her responses would be. And I said to her, and I said, but does it really go that far? And she says, no, it's for limited things. But that in itself is starting to kind of come about, and people are feeling as though, again, that is the person that it will come with empathy. So have you heard about that as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And know some colleagues that have developed, platforms where, you can choose the type of therapist you want. Do you want the warm, supportive, humanistic, client-centered therapist? Or do you want the one who's going to kind of work with you from a cognitive behavioral perspective?
Right.
And really basically teaching basically creating these different avatars with different personalities and different skill sets or different filters and ways in which they're hearing the issue. And, on one hand, it's kind of cool. And
Yeah.
they asked me to kind of go through and test it out and interact with the different types. And at the same time, like there's no guarantee that the responses are going to be perfect. There were a few points definitely where it was like, well, that felt kind of off from a clinician's perspective, definitely. But I would worry, right, could the everyday consumer identify when something maybe did go kind of offline?
Right.
And there's no checks there. So, again, it's accessible, it's always there. You and I, we have boundaries, right? We have
Right.
office hours.
Right.
Some of the AI tools, it's 24/7. If you need to talk to someone and connect and get feedback. So, you have this tool, but I think the tool doesn't always have perfect wisdom.
Correct.
It's not a connected relational body you're sitting there with. And there's no guarantee that it's going to direct you the right way, even though, some of the time it is providing you some decent direction on an issue you're having.
It's an interesting thing because it's that, immediate gratification. I want to find an answer. Or, I have people where I clearly say, you need to stop talking to other people about your problems. You come into therapy, you do have a best friend or you have a parent or a partner you can speak to. But each week you come in with 5 more people that you've spoken to with a different opinion, and they're really right, and they're coming from their personal. So you constantly keep yourself in the tornado of this drama and these emotions, which a lot of times people, they become addicted to that. They become addicted to that part. So now with AI, it's on the constant, that they can continue
Yes.
to keep themselves in that, and they become more attached to the process and the journey of it than the goal of becoming healthier, right?
Right.
And so,
Right.
the other thing that I'm noticing is that people want to confirm their fears. I don't know if you've seen this, but now when they're on TikTok, you're watching all these different things on TikTok, right? Everybody's making their own reels, their videos and everything else. Now you have AI generated ones that bring fear to a whole new level. Whether it's shark attacks, animal attacks, bees are coming at you, or, ghosts, or you're out in a campsite and you've got, some, something out there that's making you fearful, that, a fear that you heard from when you were a child is now, in the forest. So it's taking fears to a whole new level. Before, we had our fears, we saw things, we experienced things, we created our fears in our brain. Now we're seeing it. So
Yeah.
it's almost like we're creating a whole new group of fears and anxieties, and it's taking it to the next level. Are you seeing that as well?
Well, I think the example is that, and again, I think we're establishing, there may be some value in getting an opinion from one friend or running something by someone and then sitting and chewing on it and kind of coming to your own conclusions. yeah, I see people that, they're not just going to one AI tool, they're going to go to six
Correct.
and continuing to get fed different information, and then it becomes overwhelming for them. They're just flooded with all this feedback and maybe right, sort of exacerbating a fear that they have rather than helping them like problem solve and sit with and reflect on. They're in this constant reaction mode to this data that's getting spit back at them and all the possible things that could be happening. And I think that's, yeah. And so it's this data overload. I think we've seen it for the past couple decades, even with people, I think of like when they have a medical condition, they go to
The Google
Google or whatever
doctor.
their search engine,
Right.
and and of course, you can find something pretty horrific wrong with you if you search long enough,
Correct.
under a certain symptom. If you just kind of keep looking, well, what else could it be, or what else could it be? And I think AI has sort of amplified that to a whole different level, but with a little personal twist to it that makes it even feel like more intense. And I think there's concern with that. Yeah.
You know, so online therapy, I've started online therapy in the year 2000, and I was hit with a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety from, our world, our profession. And I would walk into, it was interesting. I would say I would walk into a room ready to speak, and to sometimes 500, 1,000 people in a room learning about therapy. And they were just there to say, I was taking away traditional therapy and I'm taking away this interaction between the two. And it would take about 15 minutes. And then they would be, how can we do this? How can we, make this happen? And then I had other people throughout the years that just, kind of locked in. And, change is hard. Change is really hard. And it was hard for them, in the beginning. It was definitely hard for the regulatory boards. When I would go in and speak to the regulatory boards and the things that they would say, and it was all fear-based. I'm like, it is coming. We need to be prepared. And all those years of kind of, of going through it, and I would speak about it, but I kind of put it down a little bit, and then I came back up with it again because the world wasn't ready. Then we're hit with the pandemic, and holy cow, right? Everybody is online, and now it's difficult to get them back into the office. So how are you seeing therapists needing to modify and change in order to prepare for AI coming into their offices, whether it's through conversation or maybe setting something else up?
Oh, yeah. I think the question isn't, does AI belong in mental health? It's here.
It's here.
Okay. And so anyone in the field, like if you're, if you're wanting to wish it away and hope it's not there, and, like that ship has sailed.
Right.
That's gone. It's more about how are we going to like take the fact that we know our clients are using it. It's part of their lives, not just in their, it's not just in their dealing with their personal issue lives. It's in their work life. It's in their social life. How do we help raise awareness about how to use it in a healthy way, and help them understand maybe when it's crossing the line into something it's not serving them well. I think that's really our job, whether it's as a mental health professional, as a parent, like it's here, like it's everywhere. Like you're not going to avoid it. So I think it's, for me, it's, I mean, I ask my clients, about, their AI use. It's part of something I ask on, their intake, and when I talk with them about where other places, when I ask questions about, what they've tried to, help them with the issue that they're bringing in, and I'll ask about, just things they've looked at online or using AI. I will say that question probably at least 50% of the time is a yes.
Right.
That they have turned to AI. So I think it's really about how do you integrate it? How do you help people think critically about the information they're getting? I've even had clients like print out what you're reading. Let's bring it in. Let's talk about it. And it's interesting.
That's important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I've had some really, I think, just fascinating discussions about, and through those conversations, like be able to point out, here, that sounds kind of helpful. But this part of it, maybe not as helpful. What do you think of that? And again, helping them become, consumers, critical consumers of it.
Right.
As it relates to their mental health. I think physicians have had to do this for, again, decades with the internet.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how many times I think I'm sure their patients come in and they're like, well, I read it might be this. And that.
Right.
Well, where'd you get that information?
Oh, yeah. I mean, ours will even come in and say, oh, I think I have, I'm showing signs of narcissism, or I'm showing that I'm bipolar. And when
Yes.
I said, let's take out our phones. Let's figure this out. Let's go through it step by step. Could this apply? Now let's dig a little deeper. And they walk away and they say, okay, yeah, I'm not that. I mean, just,
Right.
When we were going through school, and even when I've taught master's level classes, I've always said to them, look, you're going to go back with your DSM, you're going to go back with any of your diagnostic material, and you're going to be able to diagnose everyone in your family. Please don't. Give them a break, because more than likely it's not that at all. But yeah, they do. They come with the information. So then saying what you just said, and I think that that's fantastic that you're incorporating it, and, clients should feel comfortable about bringing in, especially again, tapping back to those fears. I've had people come in and they've said to me, oh no, this is real. Look, and I'll say, actually, that is not, it's AI generated, and let's look at how we can find that out.
Right.
So where do you see it fitting in, say, in the next 5 to 10 years? Like right now, this is where we're at. But in 5 to 10 years, how do you think it's going to be more involved in the therapy?
Well, I mean, I think it is hard. It's hard to know exactly. I think what we do know is that there's so much interest in it. Just like, you and I have seen changes in the therapy industry.
Yes.
And, where money is involved, companies are going to be motivated to continue developing more and more systems. And so just like we hear, a lot of the major sort of equity-backed therapy companies that are advertising at, major sporting events. Or,
Yes.
I think we're going to see it continue to grow, and it's going to be out in front of clients more and more.
Right.
And so, again, kind of recognizing, appreciating that, and so many of our clients are going to try on these services. They're going to be appealing to them because they're going to be low cost and quick access, which when people are in distress, those are attractive things. But I think it's continuing to help educate our clients, recognize that the AIs are going to get more and more sophisticated. So their ability to respond more effectively to things, I think, will continue to improve. We have seen that over time. The machine learning, it just continues to pull more and more information,
Correct.
and every time people are putting in data, it's creating more information, more data. The question is, how valid is the data? And so we have to continue to help the consumer navigate the information they're getting. But it's here to stay. And 5 years ago, we wouldn't have seen where this was going to be.
Correct.
I didn't, at least.
Right.
So I think it is. I don't know how. I wish if I could answer that question. That would be worth a lot. I just don't think we know at this point.
It's true. When I drawing from my history of my experience with online therapy, years ago, my gosh, in the early 2000s, I would be talking to people about, where I saw this was going and talking about how, you can get to issues much quicker and even looking from a corporate structure and how important it was for corporations to start using telehealth because, people that were struggling in the office, maybe with depression and anxiety, rather than using the money to, revet somebody, train them, let go of this person if they were unable to do it in the process, and the tremendous amount of money spending on replacing someone versus helping them. Maybe having a space in their business, location where someone could step in, have therapy with somebody online. And, I talked about that all these years ago, and it's so wonderful to see it being incorporated now. And a lot of these companies you were talking about, how, they're buying software where schools are able to plug it in, businesses are able to plug it in. I mean, there are still some impacts because, you have somebody going into a room for an hour, they're not necessarily ready to come right back out, so there's
Right.
some missing
That's
pieces.
true.
And I see, where HR needs to develop a little bit better to be able to handle a lot of this because once we're in it, kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, once we're here and we're living it, just again, after the pandemic, telehealth, most people don't want to go back. So now we're AI, people are getting used to using it. It's not going to go backwards. It's going to go forward. So I agree with you. It is here to stay. And we're finally seeing this therapy impacted in a different way. It's not taboo anymore because it is so accessible. The other part that I see to it, and maybe you'll disagree, but I'm seeing this where because people are getting more accustomed to asking AI, hey, this is what's going on with me, that they will find themselves being less embarrassed, less concerned, and actually wanting to seek therapy because it feels good, but they're not getting the comfort of the human being that they are with AI.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah. No, it's the double side of that. I do think from an access point, it has made the idea of asking for help or talking about your issue, it's made it easier for people. My concern is definitely in the more serious mental health situations that we see, whether it's with, the client who's suicidal or the domestic violence situation you talked about. Can it provide that sort of next level support that an AI can't do? It can't help, really, really drill down and understand how much
correct.
is this person's life in danger? Or, help really ask those very pointed questions about safety in the house and, talk with them about a safety plan or, a plan to leave. And it's typically not, well, at this point, I don't think it's to the point where it does that real well. So again, I think it's this blended way of we're having to think and educate consumers about sort of the okay, here's the places where could be helpful, here's the places where it's limited. And I hope and there definitely are some organizations that are starting to really talk about AI safety and wanting to put some guidelines in place. And of course, they come out of these discussions get propelled by, some of the horrible stories we hear in the media about, a teen or adult having a conversation with an AI and, and then going and taking their life because they
Yes.
weren't given real clear. But there's been a lot of reluctance to want to manage it. And that's for another conversation.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
there are there are folks out there, there's organizations out there that have created standards or some trying to create ethics around kind of what AI can do and what topics that it needs to put maybe some boundaries up around. We're just not there yet.
No, we're not.
And so it's kind of a free for all out there.
I think where I become most concerned, not just as a clinician, but as a parent, how it affects, our adolescents and young adults, because already one of the podcasts that I talked about, where parents tend to be, the new thing right now is to vilify the parents and to focus on 2 to 3 experiences that maybe weren't the parents' best moment. And that becomes the definition of who the parent is versus the 1,000 wonderful, supporting, dedicated, loving parent. And then it gets reinforced by, AI saying, and you know what? You're right. Mirror, mirror on the wall. You're right. And so that becomes a huge impact. So, that's a whole other experience. So, it's definitely here to stay. It is definitely something we want to further discuss. Because I do think it impacts adolescents and young adults far different than it does the average adult. And then even our older population. I'm forever pushing, my mom to use different things to find out information. It was funny, actually, the other day, I was telling her about where I want to travel. And she says, oh, I'm not interested, And I said, oh, okay, which was an interesting response from her. And then lo and behold, a couple days later, she says, because I had showed her how to use her phone, and she says, I really looked into it. It's one of the best destinations where people want to go. Like, she's quoting it. And I thought, okay. So, and she's a much older generation. And so I see those benefits, but there definitely is a difference between that adolescent and the adult and how the adult can navigate differently because they've had the experience of living without it.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it can, again, I think what it's doing with a lot of adolescents is it's really hijacking their critical thinking process. And at a time in their life where we're wanting that to develop and to have to struggle and to have to think through things and fail sometimes and learn through, I worry, and I don't think it's just an adolescent thing, and admittedly, it's easy to not want to think through something and just want to get some quick feedback.
Of course.
Rather than the process of sitting and reflecting and trying to figure out your own thoughts on things. So I, as an adult, have been conscious of that because, I use it for different work projects to help definitely with efficiency around, non-clinical things, but just administrative things that I have to do. But I'm really becoming more conscious of, I need to be really aware of where I'm going to put my lines on this and how I'm going to use it and how it's affecting me in my own life. But kids, right,
It's different.
it feels good. It feels, it's why, like you can pop in, hey, write me a 5-page paper on
Exactly.
on this, and it has very quick feedback and immediate payoff.
Well, and they
Which,
also get to be the expert, even, whether it's their paper or whatever else that they're doing, but a conversation with a parent, a conversation with the teacher, they're now the expert because they have all the information. And
yeah,
they had it 5 seconds before they were meeting with the teacher, and they're, looking it up. It's not right. It's not that dedicated time and research to figuring out using your critical thinking in order to get there. So, I think that can be a whole other conversation.
But I think, but it is that I think we're going to have to help figure out where is that line between, okay, there's these places where the efficiency and some of that is helpful
Right.
in our lives, and where is it hurting us? Like, where is it hurting our development? Where is it hurting our own, opportunities to learn and grow by having to struggle with something?
Right. Robert, this has been amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm thinking we need to do a part 2, definitely, really focusing on adolescence, because this is
Definitely.
where we can help the adolescents, help the parents navigate, because the parents are going to be operating from a fear base because now their kid comes back with information that makes them the better expert. And how do they navigate? And, while still maintaining boundaries and guidelines of the parent, that becomes a dance, right? Becomes a dance. And oftentimes, you want to discipline your child, but there's a fine line between breaking them and helping them, right? And disciplining them. So I want to definitely focus on that completely separate. But this has been fantastic. I agree with you 100%. It is here to stay, and it's just been building. I've been watching it over these years. I'm excited about it. I'm concerned. Everything about Chat with Dr. Kat is leading to a place where people can feel more comfortable with themselves, with their community, with the world, and how we can navigate things through educating ourselves, using empathy, and of course, kindness. So you definitely have that energy. So thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And, for everyone watching today, thank you so much. This has been really a lot of fantastic information. Remember, if you have any questions or thoughts, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, let me know, chatwithdrkat.com. If you just want to ask for information and you want to be anonymous, you can. And, I can post information for you. However else you want to do that, you can. Again, thank you so much. This has been Chat with Dr. Kat. Robert, you're amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.